Welcome to the Business of Drinks, where we go behind the bottle, interviewing beverage innovators and icons about how they built their businesses.
We take a data-driven approach, analyzing the brands, products, and categories that get customers and consumers excited.
And we cover several drinks categories, from wine, beer, and spirits to non-alcoholic drinks, as well as THC, adaptogen, and functional beverages.
So whether you're working in drinks or just interested in the stories behind your favorite brands, join us each week as we explore how companies are unlocking growth at every stage in the game.
Thanks for joining us, and let's dive in. Welcome back to the Business of Drinks. I'm Erica Ducey.
And I'm Scott Rosenbaum. Today we're talking about a gin brand that is shaking things up in a category that we don't often see innovation in. This is a brand called James, and it's an award-winning range of premium savory gins made in the UK with unique botanicals. It is the brainchild of James May and master distiller Hugh Anderson. Now, if the name James May sounds familiar, it's because you likely know him as one of the co-hosts of TV shows like Top Gear and The Grand Tour. But this isn't just another celebrity-backed or affiliated brand.
That's right. James Gin has managed to carve out a unique position in the spirits world thanks to its meticulous craftsmanship, a bold marketing strategy that's pretty unconventional. So the website, it feels super homegrown. I describe it as DGAF, like take us as we are, take it or leave it. It's pretty funny, it's candid, and as it turns out, that digital-first approach has helped turn it into one of the fastest-growing premium gin brands out there.
This is a brand that has a YouTube channel with nearly 500,000 subscribers and an Instagram with 300,000 subscribers. It's pretty remarkable, right? These aren't just passive followers. These are highly engaged consumers watching videos that range from, gin tastings, of course, to, James May attempting to spread peanut butter on a cracker without breaking it. It might not always seem like relevant content, but it is engaging content. And it's this strategy that drives real sales, especially in the direct-to-consumer channels.
And speaking of numbers, in just a few years, James Gin has already surpassed $2 million in revenue, with half of that coming from sales in the US. And that's, we're not necessarily a market that's known for embracing gin. In fact, James recently expanded from 15 total wine stores in California to nearly 40. And they're doubling down on digital to fuel their next stage of growth.
And this, of course, is where our guest, Vishal Patel, comes in. As newly appointed CEO, he brings a wealth of knowledge and experience from his previous endeavors, one at Distill Ventures, where he worked with brands like Mr. Black and Ritual Zero Proof. He's also a founder himself. His brand, Salasa, out of the UK, was acquired about a year ago. So he knows what it takes to build and exit a drinks business successfully.
In this conversation, Vishal shares some incredible insights, like why most craft spirits brands never break the $1 million revenue mark. Also, he talks about how James Gin has managed to create demand in a market where gin isn't top of mind. That's us, that's the US. And also why he believes that a brand should think of itself as a media company first and a spirits company second. This is unconventional. We don't hear a lot of founders say this.
I love it, right? We also get into the challenges of scaling, why Vishal is rethinking traditional distribution models in the US, and what's next for James Gin, including a total overhaul of their website to double their conversion rates. We really get into the nitty-gritty of some of these numbers.
Yeah. So this episode is packed with insights for drinks entrepreneurs, marketing pros, or just anyone curious about what it takes to build a standout brand in today's competitive landscape.
So let's get into it. Here's our conversation with Vishal Patel, CEO of James Gin.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Is your drinks brand looking to start or expand import and distribution?
Whether you're seeking to enter new markets or you're unhappy with a current distributor and desiring a better fit, you should know about Swig Partners.
Founded by industry experts Eric Siegelbaum and Amy Troutmiller, Swig takes the guesswork and the legwork out of distribution strategy. Swig helps brands and distributors find the right fit for long-term relationships and sales success.
US-based importers and distributors should reach out too. With Swig, they can explore new products for free. And brands, you can get $100 off by mentioning Business of Drinks. Find out more at swigpartners.com/business of drinks. That's swigpartners.com/business of drinks. Vishal, you are here with us today as CEO of James Gin. But let's go back in time, right? You're an attorney by training. How did you get your start in the drinks business?
Hi, Scott. It can only be described as a lucky break, and I was in the right place at the right time, if I'm being honest. I was trying to move away from my career in law, much to the dismay of my parents after paying for 5 years of law school, and Digital Ventures was hiring for an investment team member. I'd previously been in-house counsel at SAB Miller. I was there during the takeover by ABI, which was a wild ride. So I had a taste for drinks, coupled with my passion for startup investing. It was my dream job. I was definitely technically out of my depth. I could not Excel model to save my life, and I had to enroll on a nighttime sort of crash course in Excel modeling. However, I think my passion for the drinks industry, my legal skills, of course, and ability, I think, to talk to founders on the one hand and corporate executives on the other landed me the role. There's a bit more of a story to it, to what actually happened in the interview process, which, Scott, I know you know. But I think, let's say that's best saved for your listeners, for anyone who wants to grab a whiskey with me. All I'll say is top tip. If anyone ever sends you an Excel file, then make sure you right click just to see if there are any hidden tabs.
Very, very fair. We'll let folks grab a drink with you if they're able. But as you pointed out, right, full disclosure, Vishal and I did work together for a number of years at the Drinks Accelerator Distill Ventures, where over the course of 5 years, Vishal, you were there. You rose from, right, this investment associate, right, moving from attorney to kind of involved in investments, finance, and kind of rose through the ranks to global whiskey director. We could spend a full hour just talking about your time there, but I want to get to James Gin and what you're doing now. So if you could, right, like during that time, you worked with so many founders and so many startup brands. Any key takeaways from your experience at Distill?
I think the key takeaway is building a spirits brand is bloody hard. It's really hard, and try doing that through and after a global pandemic, and it becomes even harder. I met some fantastic founders who developed some great brands, but that's not always enough. I read a stat the other day that 90% of brands and craft distilleries in the US failed to exceed $1 million in revenue. I think most of my friends think I just travel around the world and sip whiskey all day. Of course, there was an element of that. And, let's not lie, the drinks industry is fun. That's why you and I love to work in it. But I spent most of my time trying to figure out, how do we make this brand that we've invested in one of the 10% that could get past $1 million in revenue? And then how do we make that brand get to a strategic acquisition, and that's even less than 10%? So I think it's really important not to get carried away with fast starts. There's a lot of buzz and hype, and there's some easy wins at the beginning. But the brands for me that really succeed are the ones that have a very clear commercial proposition. Why should the trade buy you? And a brand proposition. Why should consumers buy you? I think the two go hand in hand, and I think a lot of people forget that. So a good exercise I always like to do when sort of starting out a project is talk to the founders, talk to the founding team, sit them down and see if they can articulate both their commercial and brand proposition, each in a single sentence, and then you build your business plan around that.
I love that. I'm curious if how your role, right, sitting on the investment side of things kind of informs your perspective as a CEO today, right? You've been on kind of both sides, which isn't always common. What did you learn, if anything, during your time there that affects how you do your job as a CEO of a startup brand today?
My previous job was to analyze and scrutinize founders and CEOs of businesses to the nth degree to decide whether to give that founder or business millions of dollars of funding. I think one of the main traits I've always looked for is honesty. And could I look that founder or CEO in the eye and believe that they were telling me the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and absolutely no bullshit? Venture investing is extremely rewarding, but it's also a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I think you need to be really good at finding out the truth. So as a CEO, I try to be honest in everything I do, whether that's with my team, with suppliers or shareholders, or even on this podcast, as I believe that will always lead to better outcomes for the business in the long run. So I'll honestly say to you, Scott, that at the moment, I'm slightly at my depth. I'm very much learning on the job as CEO, but it's a feeling that I enjoy in a situation in which I think I thrive. For example, I have only ever line managed one person, and that's my brother-in-law. Now I lead a team of 10 people. For those that know me, I work in a very direct and logical way, but I've quickly realized that not everyone works in the same way as I do. And whereas in my previous investment role, I wasn't reliant on anyone, I came to a decision on whether to invest or not in a company by myself. That's simply not true as a CEO. And as a CEO, I simply cannot do everything myself. I need to delegate work. I need to let others lead in their areas of expertise. And my job really is to try and get the most out of the team as possible to make the company a success. So I've started adapting my working styles, my working hours. I've tried different modes of communication, all of which was completely alien to me before I started at James Gin.
Very fair, I think, right? Often people in this business equate experience or knowledge with the capacity to lead. And hopefully those three things are aligned, but not always. And usually that capacity to lead is developed a little later when you actually are forced to do so. Are there any common pitfalls that you encountered? We talked about what you look for. Any common pitfalls you'd point out to drinks entrepreneurs that you saw over and over again that you are now, happily avoiding because you came across them so often?
I wouldn't say happily avoiding. I try to avoid them, but I think the proof will be in the pudding there. I always say, be careful about growing too fast, too quickly, particularly if that means taking on external investment, be that debt or equity. I've seen the pros and cons of taking on investment now. Investment can transform and grow your business 10x, but you need to make sure the funding is spent wisely and you need to bring the right investor on board. I always ask people, before you take on investment, have you really identified who your consumer is? What's the consumer occasion you're going after? Do you know how you're going to attract those consumers to the brand? You can waste a hell of a lot of money if you haven't thought this through carefully. And when you take on an external investment, you start to lose control of the business. KPIs and targets, hang over you. You need to hit them to keep the lights on. So it's an added level of stress taking on investment, and it also sucks up so much of your time as a founder or a CEO. And so my advice to any startup founder is to really carefully consider, how do you want to grow your business? What's the end goal? What's the time frame? What are the parameters within which you want to reach that goal? And then create a business plan to match that. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be willing and able to adapt and change the plan. But do not lose sight of why you started the business in the first place.
I think that's a critical point. I think a tremendous amount of founders think or hear the word investment and they think that will solve my problems. But if I'm not mistaken, it opens them up to a whole new sort of problems, typically ones they don't expect for reasons that you stated, whether it's issues of control or just growth, which can be different, not more than what they were doing before. I want to continue along your journey. While you're at Distill, right, as I understand it, you create this brand in the UK with your brother-in-law. It's called Salasa. It launches in the summer of 2021. Can you tell me a little bit about that brand and that journey?
Yeah, sure. So Salasa is a 20% ABV aperitif made with mandarin, lychee, and cardamom, specifically designed to pair with Asian food. The idea came to us during lockdown. We had a bit more spare time on our hands, like everyone else did. Food plays such a huge part in our family, and I think everyone's food habits were heightened in particular during COVID. And I saw that Asian food, particularly Indian cuisine, the cuisine of my heritage, in the UK, Indian cuisine was getting more and more sophisticated and authentic. But yet I still found myself drowning my favorite curry that I'd cooked or ordered in a delicious takeaway on a Friday night with a lager. And the next day, I felt pretty worse for wear and pretty bloated. And so we thought there must be a better alternative. We tried to find it, spent a lot of lockdown trying different drinks that go with Indian food, which wasn't the worst way to spend a Friday night, but we couldn't find it. And so we decided to set out and design our own perfect drink to accompany our favorite food. We created the liquid in our kitchen in December 2020. We then worked with a fantastic liquid developer to commercialize the recipe for us. Then I focused on the production side of things, so sourcing dry goods, finding a contract manufacturer to bottle it for us, while my brother-in-law, he was much more marketing and branding focused. And I have to say, he designed a beautiful looking bottle. I think I had perhaps one comment on the color, which he ignored anyway, which was probably for the best. We then commercially launched our product in summer 2021. So it took really sort of 6 months from, ideation to launching the product in market, which is fairly quick. But to be clear, the product was by no means perfect, but we just wanted to get the product out there. We realized it was largely irrelevant what we thought. What was of more importance was, what do consumers think? What does the trade think? And so we were just eager to get the product out there. And luckily for us, people liked the liquid. They thought the branding looked great. And then we were off at the races.
Amazing. And then, this is a product that I imagine a lot of our listeners aren't familiar with because a number of them are US based. A lot of brands have these aspirations of global domination. We're going to be in every country and we're going to export to, the United States. It's a dream market, but that wasn't Salasa, if I understand correctly.
No, that, we did have, we had early dreams and desires of global domination, but it never got that far. But I think, an important lesson I learned from Salasa, which I apply now to, James Gin and anything else that I do, is that it's just as important knowing in business when to call it a day, whether that's, sell, cash out your position or just cut your losses, just as much as it's, striving for glory at all costs and, aiming for that big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. The harsh reality, Scott, is that most drinks brands don't make it. They either fold or they don't get acquired. And you have to be realistic about your chances in an ultra competitive market. The key bit of advice I was given before starting Salasa was to make sure while you're doing it, you're always having fun. And when the fun stops, that's probably when it's the right time to move on. And so, I'm at the very start of the journey with James Gin. We do have huge ambitions to, scale and grow the brand in a profitable and sustainable way. But most importantly, we're going to make sure that we have fun along the way. And I think with Salasa, we didn't completely nail it. We were at the beginning of a journey whereby we were trying to create a new spirits category for people pairing spirits with food, tapping into the growing trend of aperitifs, tapping into the trends of people drinking less alcohol but better quality, lower tempo drinking occasions with food at their center. And I think we showed enough proof points that Salasa met a clear consumer need. But we didn't have the time, the money, or the resources to do it ourselves. And fortunately for us, there was a larger drinks player out there in the market that saw the potential of the size of the prize, the potential of the brand, and was keen to take it on. And so I didn't really want to or thought I would sell the brand after 3 years. But then in the moment, it was a win-win situation for everyone involved.
Yeah, and I think you point to something that's pretty interesting, which is with Salasa, you were trying to tap into an unmet consumer need. You were also at the same time, bringing to consumers this new idea or category, right? How their behavior might change. They might bring this brand to a particular meal or occasion instead of a beer. That contrasts pretty starkly with James Gin. It's a gin. People know gin, or do they? Right? You are the CEO. Tell me a little bit about the brand. And there are lots of gins. What attracted you to this opportunity? And what is it about James Gin that's special?
I think what was really eye-opening to me when I went to the US a couple of weeks ago for a field trip, to answer your question in another way, was gin is a struggle in the US. It's not one of the spirits that comes top of mind to many consumers. People know it. They may think that it's a bit more traditional. It's not really for them. Those that know. But I think there's a big piece around consumer education that we need to do in the US to promote sales of gin. I think the serve, a gin and tonic, needs a lot of consumer education as well in the US, as people are just simply not very familiar with tonic in the US as they are in the UK. So I think you're right. There are parallels that I could draw from my time with Salasa, whereby everyone asked me, what is it? 20%. What does that mean? Is it full strength, or is it no alcohol? I was like, no, it's got a bit of alcohol, just not as much as you would typically expect. And so I think we really do have a challenge ahead of us in building the brand in the US, which is our key market. And we've definitely got some ideas on how we can promote gin and promote the gin and tonic serve in the US. James Gin itself is a range of award-winning premium savoury gins made in the UK with unique botanicals. The brand was founded by James May. He's best known as a presenter on Top Gear and also on the Grand Tour. Fun facts: Top Gear is the most widely watched factual TV program, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. I know you like a stat on your podcast, Scott. It's played in over 200 countries worldwide and watched by 350 million people, which is pretty crazy. For those that don't know James bought a local pub in Wiltshire a couple of years ago now, against everyone's advice. The pub was going out of business, so he decided to buy half of it himself. His next thought was, it's probably going to be a good idea to make some gin for the local people. So he teamed up with the local master distiller, Hugh Anderson. They just happened to be a master distiller in the nearby surroundings to the village, and they created a gin which blended the flavour of parsnip, because it reminded James of the dampness of England, with Asian spices, because spice adds a bit of excitement to everyone's life. They thought the bottles produced would take years to sell out, but they sold out in a few days. And from that moment, the gin-fueled monster that is James Gin was born.
Amazing. Thank you for all that. So, tell me a little bit about about brand personality, right? When I encounter this, I don't necessarily know that this is, for lack of a better term, a celebrity brand, if you'd even call it that. It is a widely watched program, and he's well known in parts with certain audiences. But what is the feeling or emotion of James Gin? And then further, Tell me a little bit about the other flavors, the price, just so we can situate it in the universe of spirits.
Sure. So why don't we start with the product lineup? So our core range retails for $39.99. It comes 80 proof in a 70cl bottle. As I mentioned, our lead SKU is Asian parsnip. Unique botanicals include parsnip, grains of paradise, which is a type of pepper, and rosemary. James and Hugh got together in Hugh's shed, and they created a bunch of delicious other flavors as well. And so our second SKU is London Drizzle. That combines beetroot, lovage. Lovage is, think parsley meets curry leaf, and ginger. And that combination evokes the unique smell of petrichor. Do you know what petrichor is?
I do not. I'd be pretending if I said I did. Please enlighten me.
So petrichor is the smell when light rain hits a pavement on a warm day. James is convinced he has never met anyone who doesn't like the smell of petrichor. And so that was the driving brief behind London Drizzle. Our third SKU is California Dream Gin. That combines mushroom, oregano, and patchouli. And really, that was created as a bit of a homage to the hippie movement in California. Our gin has proved particularly popular in California, and it was James's way of saying thanks. We actually launched California Dream Gin as a mystery flavor online. No product information, absolutely whatsoever available about it. And we sold over $200,000 in pre-orders in the first 10 days before the product had even been revealed to the public. And then finally, we have a Navy strength version of Asian parsnip. That's 114 proof, retails for $49.99. And I guess that's for people who like a bit of extra alcohol in their gin and tonic.
Amazing. Yeah. So, you mentioned the sale of the mystery flavor before launch. Can you help situate things in terms of the brand? Where are you in terms of sales, either cases or dollars? It's still pretty early in this brand's stage.
Yeah, we're now into our fourth year, I believe. And in terms of sales, last year we passed $2 million in revenue. Over $1 million of revenue was generated in the US, which represents 50% of our business. And the majority of our US revenue actually comes from D2C. We've only spent about $100,000 on paid ads online. And so 95% of our sales to date have been generated organically. We are adopting a D2C first approach in the US, contrary to many spirits brands. And then we're leveraging that customer data to drive a more focused approach in retail, starting in California and then expanding to wherever the data takes us. We are available in Total Wine in California. We recently just expanded from 15 stores to nearly 40 stores in the last quarter. The UK is obviously a key market for us. It's our home market. And we will hopefully have some very exciting news to share in the coming weeks to kickstart our national expansion plans in the UK this year.
That is extremely interesting, right? If I look at James Gin on paper, right, it flummoxes me a little because you're kind of breaking rules that I know as tried and truisms. You if you're just starting out, you don't launch in 2 countries. If you're just starting out, you don't build, a bottled brand around, DTC marketing. And this is kind of, dear listeners, an aside as I look off screen to you in the distance and away from Vishal, but this is kind of why I wanted to get him on air. Is there's a really incredible story to tell with regard to the company's marketing strategy. And also, Vishal, you have hinted that you're going to be a completely open book. So starting with the marketing, what's so special about James Gin's tactics that have helped it build this following, that have allowed you to sell out mystery flavors online and get people to buy the bottle, not at retail store, but via, delivery or DTC?
I think one important fact to recognize is that before I joined, the brand was started by people who will be the first to admit they had absolutely no knowledge whatsoever of the drinks industry. Instead, they are a group of successful media professionals with a wide network of specialist, creative, and technical experts who know everything about storytelling and nothing about selling alcohol. So arguably, we should be seen as a communications agency that happens to sell gin rather than a spirits company. And I believe that this has really driven the brand's success to date. For example, you touched on it, because they didn't know that selling D2C in America is almost impossible 3 years ago. They just went ahead and did it, and they figured out a way to do it. If they'd asked anyone in the industry, was it a good idea to sell D2C, they probably would have been put off. But now look, the US and US D2C is our largest market and channel. As for social media, James has his own substantial fan base. Let's not shy away from that. But James Gin, the brand itself, recently celebrated its millionth follower across all social media channels. All of our content for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, it's all created in-house and tailored for each platform. Who would have thought, not directly talking about gin or consistently telling people not to like it, not to comment, don't subscribe, would actually promote more following and help to lead to more sales? Scott, I think people online are looking and craving genuine, authentic content. They want to feel part of a community. They don't want to be sold to the whole time. The James Gin consumer is just as happy watching James trying to spread peanut butter onto a cracker without breaking it as watching a detailed discussion on how many bottles of James Gin you can fit into a Cybertruck. 8 million people, by the way, have watched that Cybertruck video. So, for me, our sort of company mantra is do as others don't. We don't want to be like every other spirits brand out there. We want to break rules. We want to be the first to try things. And hey, look, it might work, it might not. But as long as we're having fun, we'll give it a go, and then we can reassess.
Yeah, I think, industry doctrine leads a good number of folks to believe that the story of the product itself is what needs to be compelling. And certainly that doesn't hurt. But I think what you've proven is that if the content is compelling, people will come to the product. The fact that you all have 1 million followers across your social media accounts must put you in the, upper echelons, the top 5 or 1% of drinks brands. And you haven't even really gotten started yet, I imagine.
I totally agree with you. For me, with my CEO hat on, and given I'm a bit more biased towards finance, investment, and the commercial side of things, what's interesting is we have 1 million followers. But when I joined the business, I did a website audit. An interesting stat came out of that website audit: 0.75%. It relates to a D2C metric. Have a guess what you think 0.75% relates to.
Let's go back and just translate this for US English. 0.75%. Are you saying 0.75%?
Yeah, I didn't know there was a difference.
See the intricacies of American versus European business. So 0.75% of some folks that visit the website are something, and I'm going to guess what that is. I'm not going to pretend to know. You're just going to have to share.
0.75 or 0.75 or 0.75, however you want to call it, is the conversion to purchase for new customers on our website. So put simply, if 100 people come to our website, less than one person is actually buying a bottle of James Gin before they leave. I was blown away by that. Now, luckily for us, we have more than 100 people that come to our website. But what that told me is that we have this fantastic social media engine and platform. But if those, as a business, if we can't then get those people who engage and consume our content online and convert them to actually then buying a bottle of James Gin on our website, then we're not going to have a business for much longer. What made me feel better is that I could double the size of the business just by bringing that 0.75% conversion rate up to the industry standard of 1.5%. So we're currently going through a complete overhaul of our website and looking to optimize the customer journey. And I'm excited to announce, just as an exclusive for your podcast listeners, that the James Gin website 2.0 is launching in April. And I'd love for your listeners to go on the website in April and let us know what they think.
This is not paid marketing media, but I appreciate that. That's absolutely fascinating, because what you share, right, with that 0.75% is a lot of brands that don't have 1 million followers across channels probably are, even if they're getting 1.5%, that industry standard, they don't have followings large enough to invite their potential customers to their website to then get that very small conversion. To that end, what do you know about your consumers? What demographics are most represented again amongst people who buy James Gin? Is this important information for you? Have there been any surprises as you've delved in?
Our top performing demographic on socials is 25 to 34 year olds, 30% of our audience. Then the next cohort, 35 to 44 year olds, is 25%. I think people are surprised that the James Gin consumer is younger than they think, presumably, particularly in the UK, because people associate James with an older audience that watch Top Gear. It doesn't surprise me, though, because younger people live online, and that's where our brand lives and breathes. Some people have never even come across James before, and I even think that some people think James is a career YouTube influencer. It's also not surprising to me from a gin perspective, because it's this younger age demographic of 25 to 34 year olds that are fueling the growth in super premium gin in the US, and that's driven by their love of cocktails. I think what is surprising is 95% of our social followers are male, 95%. But the split of male to female customers on our website is actually 60-40. Moreover, in the UK, there are more women than men that buy premium gin. So as a business, I look at those stats and I think, something's not quite right there. What are we doing or not doing to attract more female consumers to the brand? And so we're actively looking at all of our content, our comms, drinking and gifting occasions to see if we can attract more female customers to our brand.
Interesting. Like this model, right, in isolation as a case study is fascinating, because again, it goes so against the grain. But the strategy and these tactics that you're stewarding, do you think that this is replicatable? Like, what can other brands do, or how can they benefit from, adhering or trying out some of these ideas, as it were?
Yeah, I think it's totally replicable. I think first, you need the right set of in-house marketing and communication skills. And second, as a team, you need to throw out all these archaic notions of how brands should be built, like, build in the on-trade, then grow in retail, or throw cash at paid advertising to buy customers. These fundamentals need to be rethought. At James Gin, we believe online is the new on-trade. We can intimately get to know our customer online, what they like, what they dislike, where and how they shop. So we aim for the first bottle of James Gin to be purchased online, and then the second, third, and fourth, wherever convenient for that customer. Paid advertising is like a drug. Once you start, you can't stop. And the algorithm forces you to keep spending and spending, which is why we're taking a much more cautious approach to building our customer base. We want to build a profitable and sustainable brand. And if that takes an extra year or two to get there, then fine, we're totally we're totally fine with that as long as we're building brand value. So if our business model is not replicable, then what potential value does the brand have in the future? It's limiting. It's something that I think about all the time. So our biggest marketing challenge is each year we need to edge the brand away from being reliant on James to be the sole voice of the brand. We need to transpose his values to the brand, but we need to weave in other characters and voices into the story so that James Gin as a brand can stand on its own 2 feet as we watch James sail off into the sunset. In the future, Arthur Guinness and Johnny Walker, they were prominent individuals in society 250 years ago. They're no longer with us, but the brands they built are, and they're some of the most beloved in the industry. We don't need James Gin to survive 250 years. 25 years will do us. So how can we make our marketing playbook replicable? That's the challenge for us, and that's something personally I'm really excited to take on in the role of CEO.
I love to hear that, because I hear a lot of startup founders, they ask me, should we work with a celebrity? Should we work with an influencer? And, the answer is maybe, but you point to the deciding factor, which is it's not about that person as an individual. It's about their ability to translate, right, their values, their personality, their connection with the consumer into the brand, to infuse it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly. You asked earlier in the conversation, to talk about a celebrity brand. We don't like to use that term. If anything, we're an anti-celebrity brand. We are a communications agency that happens to sell gin. The ways in which we do that are numerous, and yes, we have the benefit of using James and his voice to amplify our marketing efforts, but there's so much else that goes on behind the scenes and in the marketing playbook that we use and we try to use to help build a community around the brand and what we're doing.
Got it. Now, in a previous discussion, you shared with me that you're going to be as transparent a CEO as possible. I've seen some LinkedIn post that you've put up, online. This is a business that is rife with NDAs and proprietary information. Why do you think there's value in sharing numbers and not shying away from topics others tend to avoid when talking about, the drinks business?
Transparency is key to everything we do at James Gin. We deliberately talk in straightforward language with humor, but no bullshit. And I think this sets us apart from all the other gin and spirits brands out there. Consumers are sick of hearing pretentious nonsense about hand-plucked botanicals distilled 70 times. We have a list of banned words on our website, and they include things like quaffable and artisanal. And we're only half joking. I believe in being honest as a person. I also do business in an honest way. And I think if we can help others along the way from our mistakes as well as our successes, then why not be completely transparent? I don't understand what people have to hide.
Okay, so perfect. You said it. You are now in the hot seat officially. Is there a business number for James Gin that you're proud of, that you're happy to share here? And why is that a number that you believe is a good number?
As a team, we were really proud of passing that 1 million follower mark across our socials in February. It's affirmation of our authentic content creation strategy working. We are building something that people enjoy, that people engage with, and it's worth all the hard yards and effort that goes on behind the scenes. I think people think working for a spirits brand, it's G&T o'clock all the time. That is so far from the truth. We're already working really hard at trying to capture the next million followers.
Interesting. Yeah. The work never ends, right? There's never the top of the mountain. Inversely, I'm curious, is there a number that you could share other than that conversion rate that you think could be improved, and how do you intend to change that number, whatever it is?
I think we need to do a lot more to attract more female consumers to the brand. I think I shared earlier in the conversation that 95% of our followers on social are male. That is at odds then with who actually purchases the product. And then in the wider, particularly UK retail space, there's actually more women than men that are buying gin. And so we are definitely missing out on 50% of the general population that could either be buying the product for themselves or buying the product as a gift for their loved ones. And so we're doing our utmost to try and see how we can attract more female consumers to the brand, whether that's through content, adding additional characters into the story. Believe it or not everyone loves James. But if you like gin, our gin is award-winning. It's made by a master distiller and it makes a banging cocktail. So do we need to dial up, the quality of our gin, the process on how we make it, in a no nonsense, no bullshit way and in the James tone of voice? But is that something that we could do that can help attract a broader demographic than we're currently attracting on our socials?
Amazing. That is really, really heartening to hear that even with 1 million followers, there are still things to be improved. And again, the journey continues. I'm curious, given that you have experience in working with drinks, particularly spirits, on both sides of the Atlantic, in Europe and in the United States, what do you think that drinks founders that aren't from the United States should know about the U.S. market? How does a founder know if they're ready to export and really sell in the U.S.?
As cliched as it sounds, there is never a perfect time to launch in a new market, particularly the US, given its size and complexity. I think what I'd like to do is dispel some of the myths about selling in the US. Everyone says, oh, the US is so expensive. It's really not, or it is if you do it in a certain way, but it doesn't have to be. Our D2C approach enables us to ship to consumers in 42 different states, and we don't have a distributor. We can test and learn with a bigger pool of consumers in a controlled way without having to give thousands of dollars in A&P to a distributor to help us grow our brand, without knowing who our consumer is in the US, where do they live, and how we're going to reach them. Going with a national distributor has its advantages as well as its disadvantages, particularly when you're small. I always ask drinks entrepreneurs, if you go with a large national distributor, are you going to get their sales force's share of mind? It's unlikely. Personally, I would prefer to partner with a smaller, more hungry for your business type distributor to help you grow the brand in the early days. And then hopefully the larger national distributors will take note and they'll come to you in the future. I also personally don't have any issue with having different distributors in each state, or even within certain counties within a state. So for example, California, where it's so big. I think ultimately you need to have a clear plan and strategy in mind when launching in the US, and you need to stick to it to avoid spending lots of money with little return. At James Gin, we are taking a D2C approach first in the US to inform a more focused retail strategy targeting national chains. I prefer to go deep with a chain and follow their footprint nationally rather than go deep in a particular state across multiple accounts. We simply don't have the workforce or the resource to service so many accounts. I'm not saying our plan is 100% going to work, but our company mantra is to do what others don't. And I think there's a clear opportunity with the upheaval we're all seeing with the 3-tier system right now in the US to try something different and rewrite the rules on how craft spirits brands can compete and scale in the US market.
I love that, because when you try to do what other brands do, if you don't have the same resources, right, you are competing at a disadvantage. So for a company with a small team, with a, you know, uh, what I presume a limited budget, right, you're not going to outcompete the big guys when it comes to A&P spend, when it comes to giant sales teams. So you're taking a route that is best suited for you rather than generically best suited for a brand in the industry. Final question for you. One of our favorite questions, right? Someone listens to this podcast, they're a drinks entrepreneur, and they ask you for a recommendation. How can I learn more? Be it a book, a movie, an online class, someone I should follow online. What or who do you recommend, provide the greatest insight in a single source? Can be drinks or not drinks related. Where should they go to learn more?
Simple answer, drinks related, sign up to Mark Brown's industry news update. I had heard so many things about this email update, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I didn't know how to describe it. I saw online that Mark was no longer producing it. I don't actually even know who Mark Brown is, personally speaking. But when I got access to that email update, it totally changed the way that I think about the drinks industry. It's got so much content in there about what's happening in the drinks industry, whether that's beer, wine, spirits, trends going on in the market, opinions. I think if I go back to my investment days, knowledge is power. And my advice to any drinks entrepreneur is you need to understand the wider industry context. You need to be able to spot the threats and opportunities. My advice would then always be to go against the tide, but you can only go against the tide if you've got real clear learnings, thought, and conviction on how to do that. And so I simply encourage everyone to sign up to Mark Brown's email update.
Thank you so much for that, everyone. Vishal Patel, CEO of James Gin. Vishal, besides visiting the new updated website soon, anything else you want to share or anything else we can look out for James Gin?
Take a look at our socials if you haven't already. Whether you like gin, you like James, or you don't like either of those, at least it will give you, hopefully, a couple of minutes of laughter in your day. And that's all that we really want to do.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you very much.
It's time for Last Call. This is Caroline Lamb, joined by Erica Ducey and Scott Rosenbaum. And I was feeling like I needed to be humbled today, so Scott is going to give us another quiz.
I am thrilled to challenge you both with a little Q&A here, little quiz. So Discus, the Distilled Spirit Council of the United States, recently released its annual economic briefing, which is as exciting as it sounds, but this is essentially a look back on 2024, a kind of state of the union for the drinks industry. So I've got 3 questions, and let's dive in. They're multiple choice. Okay. So question number 1. In 2024, what alcohol category held the greatest market share of dollars? Okay. Was it wine, beer, or spirits? Which was the largest category in terms of dollars? Caroline, you're up.
Had to be spirits, I think. Locking in spirits.
Beer by a wide margin.
It was spirits. Caroline,
what?
You are correct. It was
no way.
Yeah, spirits 42.2% compared to beer's very close 42%. So spirits had 1/5 of 1% more market share than beer in 2024.
Wow, I would not have thought of that, because a lot of the data that I look at is suggesting and indicating that beer is, from a sales perspective, is much higher than spirits.
We will link to the actual report in the show notes. They're basing it off supplier revenue, which might be different from wholesaler revenue or any other number of mitigating factors. And that might explain the discrepancy there. But they did say spirits was slightly larger and has been for a year or two.
Interesting.
Wow. All right. What's next, Scott?
Okay, question number 2. Since March 2020, the hospitality industry employment, is it the same in terms of number of people employed in hospitality? Is it up? Are there more people employed in hospitality since the pandemic? Or is that number down? Are fewer people employed? We'll start with you, Erica.
I would say it's way down. And, I could be wrong here, but it feels like every restaurant and bar that I go to tells me how hard it is to fill roles. So this may be a trick question, but I would say it is down.
My first instinct is that it's down as well. And then I'm thinking, maybe restaurants are short staffed, but there's more restaurants. So it's the same. I don't know. I'm going to say down. I'm with Erica.
So the answer is that hospitality industry employment is up. It is up slightly, though. It is up 92,000 jobs compared to pre-pandemic level, which when you compare that to how other industries have grown, it will feel down. It hasn't kept pace with the growth of the drinks business. So it is up, but it doesn't feel up because it's not up as much as one would anticipate. Kind of a vibe session, as it were, when it comes to hospitality employment.
Are there any factors cited there as to why it hasn't grown at the same rate?
They didn't cite any factors, but they did say that despite it being up, it wasn't a positive sign because it should be up significantly more given how much time has lapsed.
Okay.
Interesting.
They found it pretty worrying. All right, last question today. So from 2023 to 2024, which of the following spirits categories grew the most percentage-wise in terms of dollars, in terms of value? So which grew the largest percentage-wise? Was it tequila mezcal? Was it cocktails and RTDs? Or was it vodka? Caroline, back to you.
Oh. I think I'm going to go with my first instinct, tequila.
All right.
I'm going to go with RTDs. I think RTDs are just crushing every other category. That would be my strong guess.
Erica, you are correct. Cocktails and
Woo.
RTDs, they were up 16.5% in terms of value. That's compared to tequila and mezcal, which was up, but only 2.9%. And vodka was flat.
Yeah. That last one doesn't surprise me. It doesn't seem like too much is happening with vodka these days. But yes, tequila up and then RTDs crushing it. That is consistent with the data I've been looking at.
And that's it. That's our quiz for today. How'd you guys grade yourselves?
I came in a little too hot there, got confident, so give myself a C.
Yeah, I'll go C. Definitely a middle C.
You can go brush up and read the report. We'll link to that in show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks for joining us on Business of Drinks. That is all for today. You should follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and tap that notification button so you'll be informed whenever we have a new episode. Also, help spread the word. Click those star ratings and share on your socials, on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you can help us find new listeners. Finally, if there's something that you'd like us to cover in one of these last calls, please let us know. You can reach us at podcast@businessofdrinks.com or reach out to us on our socials, Instagram or LinkedIn. We want to hear from you, and we do respond to messages. See you next time.